Today we are going to be talking about how to choose schools and how to weigh sometimes prestige and the doors that might open for you and scholarship money and cost, because it's no secret that sometimes the highest ranked schools will give you the lowest amount of money. For those of you who are new and just joining me, my name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the owner and founder of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where I provide personalized college counseling and law school admissions consulting. As the daughter of military parents and a Jamaican mother, I was taught that education is the bedrock and the foundation of upward mobility. As the first lawyer in my family and a graduate of Princeton and Harvard Law School, I am passionate about helping other students break down generational barriers, step confidently into their futures, and build communities for life. So especially if you're a first generation student, especially if you're a minority, if you're trying to break cycles of debt and poverty in your family, in your lineage, how do you weigh the potential doors that might open with the need to be in as little debt as possible, the desire to take scholarship money and not have that financial burden on your family? Let me know if you are trying to figure out what value to put on a name brand law school, which can be different from the conversation of name brand college. I work with 9th through 12th graders in the college application process, and it is sometimes a very different conversation. And I'm going to be frank, as a woman of color, it's a very different conversation. So I want to know if that's something that you're dealing with. We are going to break down 3 different factors that really should play into your decision about how much debt to take on, when prestige is going to be the driving factor, when that future payout is going to be the driving factor, and when it makes sense to say no, even to a school like Harvard, which is, I know, but I'm going to say it, like sometimes it makes sense to say no to Harvard. And we're going to talk about what those situations are. So we're going to touch on 3 really key factors for how you go about deciding that. So that first thing, when we're talking about, those 3 things that you want to weigh, whether or not it makes sense to take a scholarship offer at a lower ranked law school or to choose a Harvard or Stanford or any of those top schools, right? When does it make sense to do that and say no to scholarship money? So I'm going to give you my own personal anecdote. I was offered a full ride scholarship at UVA Law when I was applying, and my parents were like, "Oh, okay, great. So you're going to UVA?" And I was like, well, I don't know. And I ended up going to Harvard, right? So I didn't take the full ride scholarship, but I didn't go to Harvard blindly. I went to Harvard because they had their, what they call their low income protection plan. It's really a version of a LRAP. You'll hear me talk about that. An LRAP is a loan repayment assistance program. And so when you look at money, and I always tell my students, when you're looking at how much money a school is giving you and you're comparing those financial aid offers, you need to both compare front end aid and back end aid. What does that mean? Don't just look at the money that they're giving you up front, look at the money that they could potentially be giving you at the end. So for me, I knew I wanted to practice family law, and I did. I was a family law, private family law litigator. I did custody and divorce, and it was fantastic. And I knew that for most schools, family law is not covered under public interest. When we talk about those public interest loan forgiveness programs, you do 10 years of public interest and you get your loans forgiven. There's a lot of jobs that don't pay a lot of money, right? It's not big law. I wasn't making $190 a year plus bonuses. I was making a very average amount of money in the suburbs of Maryland, right? I wasn't making that big lawyer salary. And so there's a lot of jobs there, right? Employment attorneys, malpractice, like there's actually a lot of legal jobs in the world. And not all of them pay a lot. Some of them pay a very modest salary. And many of those jobs are not considered public interest. So when I was looking at schools that only forgave loans based on public interest weren't going to help me, because I was going to be SOL. And some of y'all know what SOL means, right? Like that was not the move. So I wanted to make sure that I was going to be in a school where I was going to be taken care of after I graduated, no matter the kinds of salary that I did. And so when I looked at the Harvard aid, I got max financial aid because Harvard Law is a need-based school. What that means is that they're not going to give you merit aid. You can get a 180 on your LSAT and a 4.0, and they're not going to give you merit aid. But they will give you need-based aid. And so I got need-based aid. I got the most need-based aid that I could get, right? And it still left a really, really, really big gap. So I had to take that gap out in loans. But what I looked at on that back end is, okay, how much of this are they going to pay off? You could see there was a whole calculator that you had on their website, and I can put in my expected salary. And this is when you really need to do research, right? So I put in my expected salary, and I put in how much loans I had from Princeton. Princeton is a very generous school, undergrad, in terms of providing students with financial aids, usually without loans, but sometimes life is life, and I had to borrow my parents' contribution. So I did have some loans from Princeton. So they put that in there, and they showed me year after year how much Harvard would be paying back. And what it looked like was that Harvard would be paying back almost 80% of my loans. So even though my financial aid offer at the beginning wasn't that full ride from UVA, right? I knew that Harvard would still be paying the majority, the lion's share of my loans, which at the end of the day, if you're not the one paying it, then it's kind of still like scholarship money, right? So I was like, okay, yes, my parents are like, but it's a full ride. Take that, right? And I want to also be really careful with the word full ride, because I'm gonna correct myself. I didn't have a full ride from UVA. I had a full tuition scholarship. And I really want to press upon you guys the difference between full ride and full tuition, okay? Full tuition is the tuition. But when you go to any law school website and you look at the cost of attendance, it'll have a line item for tuition, and then it'll have some fees, there might be some health insurance, there's going to be books, travel, personal expenses. That's like if you have to move there. You can borrow the amount to live, and I was K through JD, right? I was coming right from college, so I didn't have savings, I didn't have a whole bunch of stuff, so yeah, I had to borrow first and last month's rent, and I had to borrow enough to make sure that I could live in the city of Cambridge, which is an expensive city for no reason, right? And so when you look at full tuition, now Charlottesville, Virginia, look, no shade to UVA, UVA is a great school. I got really great friends, shout out to Jamil Brown at UVA, that I love. Charlottesville, the cost of living is a lot lower, but full tuition still doesn't cover everything. I would still have to take out a loan every year to cover the things that were not covered by tuition. So when I looked at how much I'd have to borrow at UVA, even with a full tuition scholarship, and I looked at how much I'd have to pay after Harvard had paid that 80% of my loans, over 10 years, and it's not like, oh, after 10 years we'll give you it. This is the kind of loan repayment assistance program that's opt-in, opt-out. What that means is they send you a check every 6 months to pay your bills. And if at some point I decide I don't want to be in it, or I make too much money, that's cool. I don't have any obligations to stay in for 10 years. I can work in an eligible job for 2 years. I can go to big law for 5 years. I can come back into the program afterwards. And it's not based on public interest, but it's based on income. You have to have a legal job or a government job or an education nonprofit job within a certain income bracket. So for me, because I knew I wanted to do family law, and I knew family law, the type of family law that I wanted to do was not public interest, I needed a program that was going to be income-based and not public interest-based. So when I took a look at all of that, it really came out to be almost equal. And I have to tell you, if it's the same amount of money, at that point I'm going to Harvard, which is where I went. And I have no regrets, right? No regrets whatsoever. But I had to do a careful analysis of the money and the financials, right? You can't just look at the number that they give you and expect that you understand it all. I told you the 3 things to know whether you should choose a school for prestige or for scholarship money. And if you were kind of following my story so far, you will hear me say that I knew I wanted to do family law. Now, hear me. I understand that some of you are like, but I don't know what I want to do, or I'm interested in 5 million things. So first, you need to figure out what you want to do, but you don't have to be so pigeonholed, right? What is most important is knowing the upper limit of what you might want to do. And I'll explain. If you are a person like me, I'll tell you, I knew I wasn't going to work in big law. I did one summer at a big law firm, and they were so lovely and so great. And I left that summer being like, if I never step foot in a big law firm again, it'll be just fine. In fact, it would be more than fine. It would be ideal. I knew that the concept of working 80-hour weeks, 12-hour days, I understand people put in their dues. It was not for me. I can't. And some people, that's okay, right? Most of my friends are at firms and totally fine. But I knew that wasn't in my heart. However, if you are the type of person who says, I don't know what I want to do, but big law would be cool. I don't know what I want to do, but making 190 plus 50, I could work 80 hours a week for that for a couple of years. Then hear me that rankings matter, okay? So if you're not familiar with it, you want to get familiar with, the vault, right? The vault it's like a ranking of law firms. And so just like law schools are ranked, law firms are ranked. Not every firm pays the same, but those top firms, they all almost price match. And yeah, I'm not just throwing out a number, it's 190. I remember I was in law school. When I entered law school, the starting salary at big law was 180. And then I remember one firm was like, we about to raise this to 190. And it was like watching a TV show or a movie, guys. All of a sudden, it was like, another firm was like, oh, me too. And then another one was like, oh, I see, guys, this is what we're doing. And they all raised their prices to match. They basically all want to be equally competitive to the top schools. If you are weighing a school in the T25 versus a school 50 and below, and you aspire to work at a big law firm, you want to be leaning the T25 route, because those big firms only hire from certain schools, and they do that at what's called on-campus interviews or early interviews. Different schools call them different things, right? We call it OCI, on-campus interview. And this boils back to the difference between a national law school and a regional law school. A national law school is going to have firms from all over the country come to your school. LA, DC, Atlanta, they're all going to come. And they're all going to court you, right? A regional school is going to have schools from that area. So if you're in Texas, you're about to get a whole lot of Texas firms. But you're not going to get, DC firms, LA firms, New York firms, all that good stuff. A lot of those big firms are only going to send people out to recruit. Because listen, anytime that they're not at the firm, they're not billing hours. And my friend and I at the firm used to say, always be billing. Right? That's the motto. Always be billing. Always be hitting those billable hours. Now, when they're out there at your school talking to you, they are not billing. Okay? They are not making any money. So they are only going to schools where they can recruit that good talent in their minds. And I absolutely strongly believe that where you go is not an indicator of how smart you are, how intelligent you are. It's not an indicator of your worth as an attorney. But it's low-hanging fruit to say, we want good attorneys, so we're going to go to Harvard. There are fantastic attorneys, right, at UDC. I knew some. They're fantastic. But, they don't want to have to find diamonds in the rough in their mind. Not that I don't think it would be that hard to find, truth be told. Just look. But, they don't want to. Okay, so, Malcolm Gladwell in his podcast Revisionist History actually did a really great expose on law firms and where they get their attorneys from, and actually showed that the attorneys from the top-ranked schools did not do any better than the attorneys from mid-ranked schools, right? So, and they know this, but they like to maintain a certain, there are some firms that only hire from Harvard and Yale and Stanford. That's just their motif. So if you're saying, I really, really, really want to go to a big law firm, then the ranking matters. If you're in DC or you're in New York, Brooklyn Law has a fantastic big law placement. Shout out to Brooklyn Law. And people sleep. They're like, but it's not ranked well. Okay, but it's in New York City. So those students are able to get externships. They're able to get opportunities during the school year to be able to network their way into those jobs. But if you are not going to a lower tiered school in a big city, right? If you're going to a lower tiered school in Oklahoma, and you're trying to make your way to New York City, it's gonna be you can do it, but like, you gonna have to hustle. Like, you gonna have to really, really hustle. All right. So like, choose wisely. Most of my friends who went the firm route are able to pay off their law school loans in about 5 to 7 years. And in that case, you might go into a little bit of debt. But as I told you, if you make that 190, plus you're probably going to get about 50 for bonuses, the trade-off for them is worth it. Now, you might be listening to this and saying, okay, I don't want to go to a big firm though. I'm public interest through and through, right? I'm going to help everyone. Cool. There are some places, the top public interest firms, they also only hire from certain schools. So if you're saying you want to go to the ACLU, you want to work at the Southern Poverty Law Center, you want to work at the Equal Justice Initiative, like, those are really big names that for the most part are going to pull from those top schools. So that is why I ask, what do you want to do? Now, if you're telling me I want to be a prosecutor, listen, you can be a prosecutor a lot of places, okay? You want to be a prosecutor and someone's giving you a lot of money, I would just like consider it, right? Because outcome's going to be kind of the same. Now, I will tell you this, as I sit here, right? I wanted to be a family law attorney. I didn't have to go to Harvard Law. I could have gone to Maryland. No shade to Maryland. Shout out to Maryland. Love my state, right? Did not have to do that. But I would not be sitting here right now and have been able to make the career moves that I made if I hadn't gone to Harvard. Just going to be very real with you. So I like to say that going to those top schools opens doors that you don't even know you want opened. And that is very important, because when I went to law school, I was 21 and I didn't even know what doors I wanted opened. I didn't even know what doors there were to be opened, right? So when you have the pedigree, you're able to walk into spaces that you didn't know you would need to be prepared to walk into. Now, the second thing that you need to consider, right? We're talking about jobs. The second thing you need to consider is how much debt you already have. Now, some of you guys have left undergrad with $100,000 of debt. You do not need to get another $200,000 of debt. That's just going to be a bad decision. I don't care if it is Harvard. That is going to be a really hard thing to pay off. Okay? Like, don't do it. If you are coming into the situation with, like, I don't know, $50,000 to $100,000 worth of debt already from undergrad, I would think really hard about these scholarship offers, because it's twofold. One, you need to make enough money coming out of the school. So don't just be taking any nook and cranny school that's about to give you a full ride if the median salary is not what it needs to look like. And you can see the median salaries for law school. If you go to the pre-law platform and you do the wizard, it'll show you there are some schools, the median salary is like $45,000 at a law school. No shade, right? But like, you're not about to pay any student loans off with $45,000 a year. Like, that's just not really going to happen. You're going to be paying for a really long time. So if you are coming in to law school with $50,000 to $100,000 of undergrad debt, you need to make sure no matter what school you choose, the median salary is at least 80, at least, right? Like maybe more, like at least 100. And so be strategic. Pick a school that has a median salary that matches your outcomes and what you need to pay off, and balances the scholarship money that you need, okay? If you're coming in with like less than $20,000 of undergrad debt, this is a little less of an issue, right? And some of these loan repayment assistance programs, like I said, Harvard's wrapped that debt into it. So they also helped pay off some of my undergrad debt, which was fantastic. But you need to really, like, this is a numbers game, guys. Like, this is literally all about numbers and budgeting. So again, I'm just want to make sure, we haven't gotten to the third point yet, but I just want to make sure, one, you figure out generally what you're thinking about doing. And like I said, you might not fully know, but just know if you think you might be interested in clerking, if you think you might be interested in, and when I say clerking, I mean federal clerking, because you can get a trial level state clerkship from a lot of places, and then you can work your way up to a better clerkship. But if you're thinking that you might want to do a federal clerkship right after law school, if you're thinking you might want to work at Big Law, if you're thinking, ooh, the ACLU looks nice, ooh, the Southern Poverty Law Center looks nice, right? All of these big name places. Then you want to be maximizing your rankings because it's just going to be an easier path to getting there. Otherwise, especially like I said, location is important. The second thing is, how much debt are you already coming into the situation with? If you're coming into the situation with a lot of debt, that's going to be something that you really want to consider. You want to be looking at the median employment salary for these schools. You can also look at, and we're going to get to the third thing, the historic scholarship amounts of the schools. Okay, so you can be looking to see, oh, okay, I got this amount, and most students with these numbers got this amount, or most students with these numbers got a higher amount than me. Now, that can also be found online on the prelawplatform.com. Shout out to Kyle McEntee of Law School Transparency for really putting together this information. You can make your whole budget sheet and everything. You can say how much money you feel like putting out in debt per month towards your loans, what percentage of your salary you want to go towards loans, and it can really help you figure out how to maximize the finances for your law school. Now, I'm going to speak real frank for a moment. If you're a Black woman, or a Latina woman, or, a woman of color, we sometimes just have to work harder and, to get to the same exact positions. It's not right, but it is what it is. Yeah, if we were all, non-women of color, I'll just put it that way, we would not necessarily have to use our pedigree to open doors that our brain and mind and our intellect should have already opened for us. Okay? So sometimes you want to look at like the trajectory you're going, if you're thinking about going into public office, if you're thinking about that kind of stuff, sometimes the pedigree, unfortunately, is what will open the door for you. And then when you speak, that's how you'll stay in the room because you're brilliant, right? And I know that, people try to be like, oh, where'd you go? I say Harvard. And people are like, oh, but you look like you're 12. And I'm like, no, that's fine. But I still graduated from Harvard Law School, right? And so sometimes people will try to put you down a little bit, right? No matter the pedigree, right? Or, they'll try to say some snide remarks about your schools. But I just want to let you guys know that, like, sometimes we need to just serve it right back, right? And be like, no, actually, I belong in this room and this is why. But sometimes when you're looking at prestige over scholarships and we're looking at name brand, there are still people in the legal world who are very close-minded. There are, like, the legal profession is very conservative. It's very old boys club still. Yeah? The profession is slow to change, which is why we need more of us. But only 2% of us are lawyers, right? There's only 2% of Black women that are attorneys. So it's slow to change. So you need to be thinking about what is going to arm you to disarm some other folks so that, you get the seat at the table that you didn't need to fight for anyways, that you just deserve to be there, right? I always want to caution my students of color, pedigree does matter. It doesn't matter in terms of it makes you more worthy or it makes you necessarily even a better attorney. Because I will tell you, I'm pretty sure that some people got a little bit more practical legal education than I got. I mean, Harvard teaches you how to think. But, my friends at University of Maryland, they probably had a little easier time studying for the bar than I did. So I don't want you to come away and think, oh, Sydney thinks that only these schools are good or, you're only good if you go here. I don't think that at all. But I just want to prepare you for the fact that the world that we live in is still incredibly conservative, incredibly old boys club, incredibly bigoted and small-minded. And so sometimes the investment in being able to be in the room is a little worth it. Now, if you're talking about, I don't know, a school that's ranked 20 and a school that's ranked 10, then you really just have to think about your goals and also geography and the culture of the school and what's going to shape you and give you more opportunities, because at that point, they're both nationally ranked law schools. Yeah, of course, some names do carry more weight, but you also want to make sure that you're getting the clinical experience, the hands-on experience, the professional interaction. Like, that's when you really need to dig down to the legal education that you're going to be getting, because you cannot make a wrong choice at that point, right? Sometimes people are like, Georgetown, Stanford. Like, At that point, you need to go where your cup is gonna be filled, where you're going to be the truest person. Like, I went and I made sure that I talked to all the students at the Black Law Students Associations. I talked to professors. I needed to make sure that I was going to be in a place where I would feel comfortable to grow into myself for the next 3 years. Because what you don't want to do is go to a place that's going to demoralize you and beat you down for 3 years. You're not going to come out a better attorney. So, if you're choosing between those kind of decisions, that is definitely something that, again, you need to be looking inward at yourself and figuring out what is going to be a most comfortable environment for you. So we just started the February boot camp. The boot camp meets 10 times. So it is 10 one-hour group sessions spread out over a few months. You're in a small cohort of 2 to 4 people. Like, y'all really become family. It also includes 2 private sessions with me. It includes 3 extra hours of editing, and it includes office hours with me every single week, right? So, like, y'all gonna be just totally sick of me. But that is a phenomenal program. I love all my bootcamp students. Over 56% of my students get more than a half tuition scholarship, and over 78% of my students have gotten into a top 30 law school, right? I've been doing this for a minute. I'm a member of the Independent Educational Consultants Association. I'm on the graduate school committee and the ethics committee. I'm not new to this. And if you're thinking about doing the boot camp but you're not sure what it's like, there are people that I can connect you with who have gone through the boot camp. But there are also videos on my website of people talking about their experience with the boot camp, how transformative it's been for them, and how much they've really gained. And the thing is, when you do the boot camp or you do the one-on-one, you get access to my Beyond Barriers alumni community. So that means that you get connected to mentorship and other students throughout law school, study groups, exam banks, outline banks. You get connected to attorneys. So you get connected to all of that when you work with me in a boot camp or when you work with me one-on-one. I'm rooting for you. If you need anything, you know where to find me. Otherwise, I will see you guys very soon.